So this is Fireworks by Kenneth Anger. That's correct. It's Anger. When I first watched his films, I assumed it was Anger. I tried to make it very sophisticated sounding. But then I got to meet him at the Modern Museum of Art and listen to him talk about his films. So you're going to hear music in this, but I'm playing it very lightly. For Anger, music is extremely important to the image, as you might recall from the instructional video. I really feel that you should watch this film again without me in it talking over it the whole time, so that you really get the total feel of the film. So we're going to start off right away, and we see a flame being put out in water from this torch. And of course, a torch is a masculine principle, and we hear this thunder sound. And then we go to this next image, which I find really interesting, because it's our normal damsel in distress kind of pose, but instead we have Kenneth Anger, who is in the hands of the seaman, this navyman. And already it flips our ideas about normative gender behavior. And there is a storm, clearly. Storm at sea, storm in society, storm in Kenneth Anger's character's life. It's a question. So we begin grabbing at the narrative threads, and we feel that we're at the end of a story and maybe not the beginning of a story. So everything's going to be possibly flashbacks. Now, Kenneth Anger told everybody that this was based off of a dream he had. He shot this when he was 21 years old, a young man when his parents were out of town. And again, we have another really interesting switch in convention. The camera is looking at the male body, is lingering on the male body, showing the torso, showing the hand. We get this idea that the movement is of a dream. Yes, it is a little fuzzy, by the way. So that's not something there. And we see parts of his pelvis. And now we get a hand that's broken up. So we've seen a hand in Maya Deren, we've seen a hand in Un Chien de Loup by Salvador Dali and Lou Spoonwell. What is it with the hand? And now, this object here makes a lot of people laugh. It looks like it's an erect phallus, but no, it is a sculpture, an African sculpture. And right away we want to think, well, what does that have to do with anything? Is Kenneth Anger using stereotypes of his time period about man's virility and black men's virility and size? He will never touch on it again in the film, but I want to point out those moments because there are things that we should be talking about and trying to understand what the mindset is of people in the 40s. And we're looking through all of this art. There's art everywhere. Sculpture, paintings. And something we rarely see in films from the 40s, this is extremely sexual. This is a man buttoning up his pants. You couldn't do this in a regular Hollywood film. And one of the things I want you to think about, another strategy to understanding film, is this camera is a narrator. It has thoughts. It's telling us things. It's not the mind of Kenneth Anger. So the strategy is, think of the camera as a character telling us things. And this camera is enjoying looking at Kenneth Anger. So that's a fifth strategy I'm giving you to understanding avant-garde films. And again, we have this African statue again. And there's a comparison back and forth between the two of them. When we look at the top of the head, it does have a kind of phallic look to it. And now we see these matches that are from the United States Navy. All of the matches are gone, but it reminds me of the hand with the missing fingers. So whatever happened, there was a lot of smoking going on. And this is weird. He's in a bedroom, and there's the word gents on the bedroom door that he goes out of. So we think we're going into a bathroom. And now we get a POV shot. What the character is seeing, we're seeing. So he's out of doors, it looks like. Those are street lights. Those are cars moving. And we start thinking about, the late 40s when this was shot, cars were becoming a thing. And people in LA, where this film is shot, were cruising, trying to find other people for dates and kissing and heavy petting. And we have this kind of fake bar out of doors using a theatrical backdrop. And so you start thinking about seamen. Maybe it's Fleet Week. Maybe the Navy is in town. And we're doing this whole series of beefcake poses. And who takes off their shirt in a bar? This is like not a club. And we're back to that omniscient narrator watching Kenneth Anger lust potentially over this sailor. He's not averting his eyes. And we could say that this sailor is doing a kind of dance, a mating dance potentially, is a way to look at it if you want to grab narrative threads. So all of a sudden we're starting to realize that maybe this film has to do with homosexuality. If this is the 1940s, that means Kenneth Anger is a real avant-garde type of artist. He's dealing with subject matter that people are not allowed to deal with and don't want to discuss in society. And it really does feel like, I think about the birds of paradise in Papua New Guinea, as this guy shows all of his tricks. The birds of paradise always the males try to lure a female through the way they move. And we get the regular pickup line, "Can I get a light?" from this guy. And instead, he gets a beating because clearly the seaman understands that the offer of a light is a come-on line. And now here, what you have to understand is a cigarette is related to gay men in terms of a fag, and a bundle of sticks is a faggot. So Kenneth Anger is playing around with these awful words and poking fun at them. And so a gay audience, and maybe even a heterosexual audience, would understand all of these signs Kenneth Anger is using. And again, the camera flips. We see for a moment what Kenneth Anger sees, which is the streets and the cars moving. And we think about trying to find someone to spend the evening with. That's the purpose of cruising. And notice, we see what he sees. This group of sailors or navy men coming for him. And there are chains swinging. And so a real threat to gay men in this time period, of course, was gay bashing. There were men in urban areas who would go on the prowl looking for a gay man to beat up. And so this is what Kenneth Anger is sharing with us. A true piece of life that he's turned into an avant-garde film. And what I think is astounding is the use of editing here. You get the feeling, even though it's a small group of men, that the group of men is larger. And we see them repeat again and again a couple of times. So it feels like the entire Navy is against him. Now, if I was the editor, I would have gotten rid of the sailor in the navy blue because he kind of takes away from how many sailors are actually there in the editing. But this slow walking also reminds you of the horror film. And this music is so much filled with dread. And think about how unfair it is. It's always a group going after the one. And what's really strange to me is they're ripping all this clothing off this guy they want to gay bash. And with not really great special effects, it still gets you to cringe a little bit seeing that moment. And using the principles of, like, way before Alfred Hitchcock, that idea of showing violence, just pieces of it, giving you the idea of how horrific what he must be going through, is genius. That Hitchcock will apply later on down the line when he starts making films. You never actually see the blows on the body, but you get the feeling of it through the editing. and through Kenneth Anger's acting and screaming and yelling. And I always keep asking, why have they stripped this man? What is that? What kind of dehumanization is that? And then we see there's this milk bottle broken, and they cut him open. And we find inside the gay man a compass, which is having a hard time finding the straight path. So it's a kind of another joke that Anger puts in there, and that it will never find the straight way. And then to me, what is the most disgusting is a lot of times in these gay bashings, straight men would ejaculate onto the man they beat up, giving him what he deserves or wanted. It's absolutely about power, and it is horrific. And all of a sudden, this music is changing. We get this milk and honey and blood kind of idea that's biblical on some level, and certainly part of spirituals. And why have we all of a sudden changed to the bathroom? And that's about the tea room trade, where gay men might find each other. And it just says how horrible it is that that's how gay men have to meet. It's the only place that might be safe. And here comes our hero that we saw at the beginning of the film. And the music is heroic. And we know this guy's going to save him. And now we understand why the film is called Fireworks. I remember first seeing this film in my film class at SUNY Purchase in the film department. And we all laughed here, by the way. And what is this Christmas tree? What does it mean as a sign? Well, think about it. Christmas is the most joyous day in the world. And Anger has been saved by another man. And so, to be saved feels joyful and amazing, and it's hard to express that in true words, and so Anger has picked the Christmas tree to explain that. And we see this candle at the top of the Christmas tree. And it reminds us of the light at the beginning of the film, asking for a light. And the Christmas tree is on fire. And all of these images that we guess Kenneth Anger took or someone took are being burned away. Is that because they have to remain anonymous? They have to remain closed and in the dark? Is the fire something that's transformative? We're never quite sure. And that's why avant-garde films always remain a little bit open, so that we all have discussions, so that we all think about the things these avant-garde artists are trying to say. And then we're back into the bedroom. Are we out of the dream? The camera's back to that omniscient, watching the action, and we realize there's another man in the bed with Anger. And you'll notice that the face is scratched out. It does look like fireworks, but you have to think, why is the face scratched out? Because gay men cannot be seen at this time. And we're wondering, is that the sailor that was carrying him in that damsel in distress pose? We don't know, but the hand has been placed back together. Fixed, and yet falls into the water. So you have to come up with the reasons.